Hey y'all, I'm Tammy, and this is Collard Valley Cooks. I try to make old recipes and from scratch recipes for you guys, and this one is an old-fashioned applesauce cake made from scratch. It is heavy, it is delicious, and moist. It's got 1.5 cups applesauce in it. We're going to get started. This is our applesauce cake out of our second cookbook. It's been a long time since I made this for you guys, and I hope you enjoy it today. All right, we're going to start this old-fashioned apple cake, and we're going to start out with shortening and sugar, like you do in most cakes. And this is an old recipe, so they do use shortening. If you want to substitute butter, of course you can, but I personally like shortening in a cake, or at least half and half. If you want to substitute shortening with butter, you can do that, absolutely. I love shortening in a cake myself. I always use shortening. But if for some reason you don't want to do that, you can substitute it with butter, but it will be a different texture. Okay, it does make a difference in texture. So if I were going to do it, I'd do half and half. This calls for a cup of shortening. If you go half and half, you use a 1/2 cup of butter and a 1/2 cup of shortening. As long as you got something in there to grease it up a little. All right. You could even use oil if you were in a pinch. Now, what we're going to do is add our sugar. And the sugar is 1.5 cups. That had a lump in it, didn't it? Let me get that out of there. These are 1/2 cups, so I'll have to have 3 of these. All right. And you're going to beat this until it's nice and fluffy and creamy. This is kind of loud. When you get sugar in it, it wants to scratch around on the bottom. So it might get a little loud. Now, we're going to be using 2 eggs, and I've already cracked them. So the next thing we're going to use is 2 eggs and our applesauce. And it calls for 1.5 cups of applesauce. So while that's getting fluffy, you can measure up your applesauce. There's 1.5. It's a lot of applesauce. So you know this cake's going to be nice and moist with all that applesauce in there. Now remember to hit that like and subscribe button. If you've never hit subscribe, boy, does it help us. I promise it does, and we would appreciate it. Now we're going to add our eggs. Let that fluff up a little. Now I've got a scraper in here, but I still like to scrape because, I don't know, I just want to make sure my cake turns out pretty. So next goes in the applesauce. A lot of applesauce, right? Here's the 1/2 cup. And here's the cup. It's not hard to make a cake from scratch. A lot of people worry about it. I just throw stuff in there and don't worry, and it always turns out just right. Now, ask for a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. If you like nutmeg a lot, add a little more. Me and Chris do. But I didn't want to put a lot in there in my recipe because a lot of people don't like it. All right, and then a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now we're going to add our baking soda, our baking powder, and they both get a teaspoon of baking powder. Now my recipe don't call for vanilla, but I'm using some because it's good. Okay. Salt. We do have to add salt, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I have to do 2/4. That's what I got out. There you got it. All we got left is our flour. How easy was that? All right, and for the flour, I have a question I'd like for you guys to answer for those of you who get this far in the video and get to listen to my question. I have noticed that quite a few of our subs are not watching our videos as much as they used to. So I would like to ask a question. Is it because I've been making more live videos than edited videos? Tell me which one you like the best and tell me if it even matters to you, because I want to make sure and do content that you all love, okay? It's 2 cups of flour. I'm going to put the shield on so that it don't throw it everywhere, because this one don't have a real slow speed on it like a lot of them do. Really, many of the big ones do anymore. All right, so I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm going to go ahead and put a cup in there. This is a 1/2 cup scoop, so there'll be 2 of these before I even start it. This batter is so wet, I could probably go ahead and put 3 of them in there. I think I will. And then all we have left is 1. So it's just 2 cups of flour. And for this cake, I just used 2 round pans. You can use 8 or 9-inch. Now all we got left is 1 more. Now once you add your flour when you're making a cake, you don't want to beat it over 2 minutes. So you're going to mix it on a medium speed for 2 minutes. I'm going to beat it for about a minute, and then I'm going to add my nuts and walnuts, and then we'll beat it another minute. Now, I didn't have walnuts, but I got pecans, so I'm using pecans. It's a 1/2 cup of golden raisins and a 1/2 cup of walnuts. And what we're using today is golden raisins and pecans. All right, here's our 2 pans. I'm going to spray them with baking spray. I always get it when it's buy one, get one, and I get it, a lot of it at one time. I may actually put a parchment in the bottom of these because these have nuts and fruit in them. Sometimes when cakes has nuts and fruit, it tends to want to stick more. So we'll go ahead and put a piece of parchment down in the bottom. I know I sprayed it, but it don't matter. That'll just help it stay in the right place when I pour the batter in there. Okay. Now this is a pretty wet batter. It's not a thick batter like pound cake. It's thinner than that. We're going to get this in the pan. And if you're picky, you can weigh them. Make sure you do the right amount or even measure it before you put it in there. I'm just going to eyeball it. It makes plenty of batter for 2 layers. Now, if you got a 9-inch layer, of course they're going to look thinner. They're going to be thinner. Looks good, don't it? Looks amazing. If you want to substitute shortening with butter, you can do that. Absolutely. Now, even in a pinch, you could use cooking oil, okay? Well, vegetable oil. And that works too. A lot of people think you can't do that, but of course you can do it. That's what you use in a lot of different cakes, like the, let's see, the carrot cake is oil. Sometimes you can taste that oil. So let me give you this tip. If you use oil in a cake, make sure it's not out of date on the can. You'd be surprised if you don't use your oil that often how it will go out of date, and it does have a flavor that doesn't taste very good. And if you use an oil that's out of date, your cake is going to taste like that. I have had carrot cakes that taste of oil, and that's probably what happened. All right, we're going to get this in the oven, and we're going to bake it at 325 degrees. And I've got on here, bake it 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, so you just have to wait until it starts coming from the edges and the toothpick comes out clean. You're going to turn your oven down to 325 because this has fruit and nuts in it. And that's what you always do when you add something to a cake, is you do cook it at a lower temperature because it takes it longer to get done. All right. That was easy, wasn't it? It's so easy to make a cake from scratch. I don't know why people think it's such a big deal or hard to do. There's not a lot of, I know everybody says there's a science to baking. What this lady says right here, me, it's not that complicated. They make it complicated. The main thing is if you use something to measure your sugar with, use the same thing to measure your flour with. It's ready to come out of the oven. I did put this in it to see if it come out clean. And it does. And that's how it looks. It does sink a little bit in the middle, but that's because it has fruit and nuts in it. It's going to be absolutely delicious, y'all. So we're going to put it out on the counter and let it cool off. You can see it's pulled away from the sides. And don't it look moist and good? When you take a cake out of the oven, it is best to let it sit out on a cooling rack for about 5 to 10 minutes until you can grasp the sides of the pan, and then you're going to flip it out on parchment. And like I said, you should be able to touch it in about 10 minutes. There's one. Looks moist, don't it? And two. You can see all those raisins, nuts. Man, that looks good, y'all. These are delicate. Look how they bend when I pick them up. So I'm going to go put them in the freezer and get them nice and cold. All right, I'm ready to ice up this cake. I've got a little plate here, just a little cheap plate. I'm going to use it today. I'm going to put some icing on here. This cake has to be refrigerated, so you don't want to put it on a big plate that has a dome and stuff because unless you got a lot of room in a refrigerator or an extra refrigerator. Look at this cake layer. Just look at it. It looks absolutely divine. It's so good, y'all. Now, cream cheese icing. Put some in the middle. Just like that. And this one's got quite a flair to it, the way that it baked up. So it's going to make a little place on the side when I ice it. If you're making this for somebody else, you might want to just trim that little flare off. And it's just because it gets crusty and good. And I don't want to take it off because we're going to eat it. But if for some reason you were making it for somebody and you wanted it to be super pretty, you might want to trim that edge. There'll be no trimming here. We want all of it, don't we? And it is a sunken cake, but that's okay. That's how it's supposed to look. Now, if you made it with self-rising flour, if you got White Lily or a good winter wheat, I think King Arthur makes one, you could ice it. You could use the self-rising flour instead of what the recipe calls for. You know, you don't have to put it in the baking powder, baking soda, and stuff like that. See, you can see that edge in there in this one. Put some more icing on it. Take all my icing. Now, I had this icing left over from another cake, but I did go ahead and show y'all how to make the icing on this video. You could always refrigerate leftover icing and use it later. Even if it has cream cheese in it, just look at the date on the cream cheese. You can make a ruffle just by going back and forth with your, I'm just kind of pushing this down before I start. You just kind of go back and forth like a wave. You could put a little cinnamon on the top to make it pretty. We can do that right quick. Let's sprinkle just a little bit of cinnamon on it. I've got this old Watkins. They made their cinnamon come in tins this year. I just think they're so cute, and it does have a sprinkler on it. So we're going to try to use it and see what happens. Just try to barely use it. It's good stuff. There you go. Looks delicious. It's going to be delicious. It's dense like carrot cake. Should have used a knife. Probably. Let me get it over there so y'all can see it. Chris is out pressure washing on a Saturday. He's been very productive. Look at that. Yummy. I got 2 tips. I would use an 8-inch layer because you can see they're thin, okay? If you used a 9, they'd be thinner than this. So if you use a 9, definitely don't make 3 layers, okay? Or you're just going to have little bitty tiny layers unless that's what you want with more icing. This is a heavy, dense cake. It is absolutely delicious. It does sink in the middle typically because it's heavy. If you don't want that or you want to try it with self-rising flour, you can give that a try. That's my second tip. Instead of using the soda, I think the soda, usually if you put soda in something, sometimes it does make it bubble up and then fall. And so it may be because it has soda in it. So you may want to omit the baking soda, the baking powder, and the salt and use a self-rising flour and try it that way. I've never done it. I love this cake like it is. I love the way it tastes. So I just won't change the recipe. But that's totally up to you and your preferences. All right? All right, we're going to get a bite. Mmm. Mmm, mmm, mmm. This is so good, y'all. It is absolutely delicious. I mean, delicious. And the pecans fell to the bottom, which is what I like for them to do because when they do, they get toasty tasting. And whoo, is it delicious. You cannot find a better cake than this applesauce cake. If you love carrot cake, you're going to love this too. I think it's divine. All right, we've got 2 sticks of butter in the mixer at room temperature. And then you need to bring your cream cheese to room temperature as well so that it gets nice and creamy and mixes well with the butter. You're going to have 2 8-ounce blocks of that. I'm scraping it all, making sure I get my money's worth. Next one. And you're just going to mix this until it's nice and creamy. This is a Bosch mixer, and it has paddles that come with it automatically. If you decide to buy one of these this Christmas, I would suggest you get the Baker's Bundle, and you will know what I'm talking about once you get to the link on the Amazon page that I send you to. But if you get the Baker's Bundle, you get all the accessories that go with it for just $50 more, which is way worth the price. And so I encourage you to go get you one of these for Christmas this year, or someone you love. All right. And you're going to see that even making a double batch of icing, that this bowl has a large capacity. And these paddles, these scrapers work really well on it, and they're doing their job like they're supposed to. That looks really good and creamy. So we are going to start adding the powdered sugar. I'm going to add a cup, and then we'll start adding the rest of it a little bit at a time. I'm just going to pour it out of the bag today because I'm making a lot of icing. Now, if you want to use my recipe, you can. It's 4 1/2 cups of powdered sugar. Put just a little cream in it. You're going to use a little bit of vanilla flavoring, and this is my delicious Madagascar bourbon extract. Teaspoon. We're going to continue adding the powdered sugar. All right, we're going to turn it off and get it out of here. I hope y'all enjoyed watching us. Here at Collard Valley Cooks, where we cook like our mamas did. And you better believe back in the day they used to make applesauce cake all the time. Bye, y'all. Love ya.